Hi, I'm Callie from CRK Training, and today I'm here at a farm in Maryland with Wendy Murdoch of the Murdoch Method. And Wendy, you have authored numerous books, you've produced a lot of DVDs, and you've been teaching riding for over 30 years, is that correct?
Close enough.
Okay. So all that, you're a certified Feldenkrais practitioner.
Yep.
And you have, I think, it seems to me, kind of pioneered a very unique way of teaching riding. And that's why, even though I've only met you technically one other time before this and worked with you just a little bit, I really love your methods, and I am
thank you.
So happy that you were willing to do this interview with me.
Oh yeah, I brought Ned along. Ned likes interviews, so.
Okay, I forgot to introduce him.
That's okay. He'll say hi.
Well, we'll get to, I'm sure, some stuff with him soon.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to start by, after kind of that introduction, and you've had such, a long career doing this, what for you have been the highlights of your career?
Well, I have to say that when I got started, I had no idea what I was getting into, and as a result of teaching and what happened, it all started from an accident. I've traveled around the world. I take people on horseback safari to Kenya. Yeah. I actually own the safari company now, Horsing Around International. That was like a totally unexpected event. I've been to so many different countries, and I had no preconceived notion of traveling in my life. Mm-hmm. And so it's really, but I think for me, the thing that's the best is seeing the positive changes in the horses and riders that I can influence. And so, while all the other things are really fun, that's actually, for me, the most satisfying.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I put on my Facebook and my social media that I was going to be interviewing you. So I have several questions from some of you, from the viewers, but I have a few of my own that I wanted to start with.
Okay.
So my first one is actually a quote that I saw on your website, and I really liked it. And it was, "We each have within us our own teacher that recognizes what is best for our own well-being." So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting that you picked up on that quote. What I find is when someone, horse or rider, is given the opportunity to experience some options, they innately know what's best for them. Mm-hmm. And so often what happens is we, especially in riding, we try to do what's right instead of acknowledge what we feel. So we put not to say that you should disagree with your instructors all the time, mm-hmm. but we put our faith in the authority, and then we try to do what they tell us we should do, mm-hmm. without necessarily listening to ourselves. And, so many of my riders are older riders that have had injuries or, have fear issues. And they try to deny that because the teacher says, just do it, or this is how you should do it. Yeah. And in the end, they wind up either being disillusioned or get hurt or are frustrated because they weren't honoring who they were. Yeah. So I think that when we have the choices, and I see this in the horses all the time, and in your horse today in its lesson, right, in its lesson, that when he had the opportunity to feel a different balance, suddenly he got very quiet, and you could tell he was processing that, like, oh, right? And so then he starts to search for what feels good to him. Yeah. So it's not about us constantly telling him he has to be in balance, or he has to go this way, or he needs to put his head down. Mm-hmm. He starts to feel, when I do that, I feel better. Yeah. Right? And so when I get riders all the time that come to me and they're like, oh, I'm not very good, or I'm afraid. And I show them a few simple things and then give them the choice, and suddenly they don't have the problem anymore because mm-hmm. they have a solution to that problem. Yeah. So often people are frustrated or feel inadequate in their riding because they're trying to fit into someone else's model or mold, mm-hmm. and they need to take that information, but then find what works best for them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So it really relates to both the riders and the horses.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's the thing is and it's interesting, the more I learn about the brain, which is something that I've been spending more time researching, we seek that calmness. given the time, I just heard it on NPR this morning. I was driving here, and they talk about, given enough time, our nervous system will calm down and reset. And given the horse enough time, their nervous system will calm down and reset.
Yeah.
And so it's recognizing that that's what our design is to be in this calmer place, this place that feels secure and stable.
Yeah.
We need the tools to figure out how to get there. And sometimes what happens is, especially when I get women that have had children, their pelvis has changed, and so they're searching in their old place, their birth place, and that's not where their balance point is anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's moved just like it went from here to here, and they're still looking in the first place, and then they feel insecure. And then you show them, look, really, it's just here, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
So it's just helping them realize that it's there. They just need tools, and they need be able to calm down and feel that quiet moment where the nervous system just acknowledges it. I mean, I always say that the horse gets to vote when people are riding because he gives the rider feedback faster than I could.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when we listen to ourselves, we can do the same thing. We can sense that moment. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And very often in my lessons, I'll be watching, and at the moment I see the change, the horse changes and the person changes, and everybody recognizes that moment, right?
Yeah.
And so once we realize that that's possible, then we start to seek those moments, and they become a positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And so, we become our own teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. It makes a lot of sense. And I guess kind of taking that, moving into my next question, which I'm sure now what you just said there, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But with all the, the years of teaching that you've done, are there kind of some common mistakes that you see a lot of riders making?
I tend to shy away from the word mistake because it implies that we did something wrong.
Okay.
And so, I always say you can't do what you don't know, right? So if you don't know there's another option, you can't pick it. If I say here's an apple and an orange, pick the banana. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And so often riders are confronted with that. They don't have the right option to pick in the choice selection, so they make mistakes because it's not available. But what I do see most commonly, if I was to say the common areas that people are sort of not aware of, is the lower back. This whole idea of sit up straight, everybody winds up throwing the chest back and hollowing.
Yeah.
And then it's really easy, just a little force here and they're going to fall backward, or a little force here and they're going to fall forward.
Yeah.
So lengthening the lower back is like the first thing I teach, and I don't care what level ride you are.
Yeah.
I check it out. Because if the back is short, if there's too much curve in the lower back, it's going to set you up to be unstable.
Yeah.
And this is where, one of the things that I'm from the Feldenkrais training I'm really big on is the experience of the differences as opposed to the intellectual activity of processing them.
Yeah.
So when I come up to a rider, I'll feel what their back is like, and then I'll know if I push on them, are they going to be unstable? And then I do. Now, I'm not trying to knock them off the horse, but I want their nervous system to suddenly pay attention. Wow, wait a second, I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
So there's this moment of disillusionment, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because once we're disillusioned, like I thought I was stable and oh, she can knock me over, then the person becomes available for some new ideas. And then very quickly in my next step, I show them, look, breathe into my hand, lengthen the lower back, and when I push again, I move the horse. So they learn through movement, which is different than trying to intellectually analyze, right?
Yeah.
They have, I put value on it. You're unstable, you're stable.
Yeah.
Right? And so changes occur quickly. At the understanding of the lower back, that's my first and foremost lesson. And then from that, everything stems.
Yeah.
Because if you have a problem with your foot, either it's bracing on the stirrup or you can't keep your stirrup, it all starts right here.
Yeah.
Okay? And just like we want the horse, if I put Ned in a horse position, we want them to use the top line and to fill in the lower back so that
Yeah.
the pelvis can come under.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the same thing.
Yeah.
If the horse is hollow, he's going to be on the forehand. If the rider's hollow, they're going to be on the forehand. And no amount of throwing the chest back is going to resolve that because we hinge.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's my very first lesson is checking out what somebody's doing with that lower back. Mm-hmm. Is it hollow? Is it flat? Is it round? Mm-hmm. Feeling where it's flat, feeling how solid, and then I can build from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and that's probably one of the things that we see in so many ridden horses is that same hollowness in the back too.
Yeah.
So interesting that the...
Yeah, and in a number of disciplines, you can see directly the horse mirroring the rider and the rider mirroring the horse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. There's a few questions now that I'll share from you guys, from the viewers. And the first one came from Cheryl, and Cheryl says, I'm interested in recommendations for riders trying to return after injuries and what some of your insights are having been in that situation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to, if you find an instructor that's going to acknowledge your injuries. Mm-hmm. If you're in your mid-50s and you go to an instructor who has never been injured and is young and very athletic, mm-hmm. they can't relate. Mm-hmm. So it's important, not that you don't want to be babied or told, oh, you can't do this, but you need someone who can understand what you've been through, mm-hmm. especially with severe injuries. I get clients all the time that have had a variety of broken parts or surgeries. And one of the first things they say to me is, oh, you understand. Mm-hmm. Well, I do because I've been through it.
Yeah.
So it's important that when you seek help in terms of a riding instructor, that they can relate to your experience. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to talk to me about having babies, forget it. I've never had one. I don't hold children. I'm like almost phobic. And when people talk about babies, I cannot relate. But if you talk to me about injuries, I'm really good on that. And then the next thing is if you can find a Feldenkrais practitioner, mm-hmm. There's Feldenkrais.com. You can go and look there. There's also audio lessons you can do at home, and there's books written about the Feldenkrais mm-hmm. method, which uses very gentle, small movements to learn new ways of moving to rehabilitate. So what happens with injuries is that everybody focuses on the part that's damaged, and the rest of the body has to compensate. And then afterward, we're still compensating even when that part's healed, right? So it's about acknowledging the whole body and getting to sort of reconnect to how we move again in either ways we never learned or in ways that we've lost due to the injury. Yeah. So the Feldenkrais work is terrific. I've done a lot of that for my own rehabilitation. And then, be gentle with yourself. Don't expect to be able to do things that other people can do right away. Yeah. Realistic goals, steady goals, have an instructor that understands, make mm-hmm. sure you're on a horse that you feel safe, mm-hmm. Because if you had an injury off a horse where you got really badly hurt and then you try to ride that horse again, you're going to have so much emotional baggage mm-hmm. that, you could set yourself up for, I have some people and their injuries have been quite severe, and I've said, look, go to a therapeutic riding center. Yeah. You have an injury, you need some therapy. Yeah. And they have the trained people and the horses that can help. Mm-hmm. And I have one woman I can think of, and she's tried to go to regular instructors who can't relate mm-hmm. and keep putting her in pain. Yeah. So she's still riding at a therapeutic facility, but she's riding, she's not just, putzing around. She is riding, but they can relate to her injuries, which is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's it definitely, I think, would make a big difference. Yeah. In having that and just having the acknowledgement of going slower and being aware of the injury, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, with,
and, the classic with Feldenkrais is you, like when somebody comes and says, well, I injured my left knee, I go over to the right side.
Yeah.
I go away from the injury and show them how that side functions and how to improve that side. And the brain transfers that information.
Yeah.
It also, you feel less threatened then because I haven't gotten right to the source right away where, if it was painful, you might tense, and now already we've set up the pattern.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, great answer. Now the next question is from Heather, and she had 2 parts to her question. So Heather says, I'm a busy 40-something mom and career woman, and after a particularly crazy busy year, I'm having a hard time getting back into riding. So first, is there a minimum amount of weekly riding I should do to keep myself and my horse fit? And then second, is there a specific plan of action that you would recommend to get back into the riding?
I think the first thing is to set realistic goals. If you're a busy mom and you have kids, your kids are going to be your priority, right? So the riding gets put down the list, and rightly so. And so many women wind up giving away the riding during the time they're raising their children because the children are so demanding. I encourage people to keep riding if they can, but it's important to set realistic goals, because if you say, well, I've got to ride 3 days a week, or, suddenly you've set yourself up, and when you don't achieve that, then, it sets up this whole negative thought pattern.
Yeah.
So set realistic goals. Sit down with a piece of paper and figure out how much time do you realistically have to ride, and then what's your best time to ride. Is it first thing in the morning before you go to work? Is it at the end of the day and you're really tired and you've just had to deal with the kids and shuttle them around? Where can you fit your riding into your life where it's not going to be stressful? Because if you're rushing to the barn and you're rushing to tack up and you're trying to hurry to get your ride in, your horse is going to feel this.
Yeah.
Okay? So setting realistic goals. If you own your own horse, maybe there's someone that you can half lease your horse to, so that the horse can stay fit, so that the time you do have for riding isn't just always kind of taking the same 3 steps, but the horse is fit enough that you can progress. Obviously, it's important to find the right person to share that horse with. That's very important. Or he may be able to be in the lesson program where you have your horse boarded, if that's an option. So, thinking about what's a reasonable plan for you and your horse. And then the third thing is, you can practice your riding, driving your car, sitting in boring meetings. I wrote an article once, it was a long time ago, and it was essentially addressing this question. How do I keep fit and riding fit even when I can't ride? And I spend so much time in the car, on airplanes, traveling around, that my riding time is at not what I'd like it to be. But I spend time thinking about what it's like to ride, visualizing, in any exercise I do, I'm always like, how would this help my riding? Yeah. So, I travel with a hula hoop sometimes. It's great exercise, improves my circles and turns. Yeah. So I'm always and that's one thing about my books is I have a series of unmounted exercises that are all targeted to riding, as opposed to just exercise for exercise sake. Yeah. So if we're going to work out, let's make it specific to the activity we want to do. Yeah. So we're improving even when we can't ride.
Yeah. And I'm sure those you could do in 5-minute breaks at your
Absolutely.
desk.
Oh yeah. And absolutely. Just simple little exercises. Yeah. And it doesn't take much to, get a little practice doing something else that's going to help your riding.
Yeah. All right. Last question, and there were actually kind of a lot of little questions about this because I know there's a lot of interest in your Surefoot system. But I kind of picked out one, and this was from Clara, and she just asked, could you share a little bit on how the system works?
Well, Surefoot has become my passion.
We could probably do a whole interview.
We could, and maybe we will sometime. Yeah. About 3 years ago, I put a cushion underneath the horse's foot and watched it change, and ever since then, I've been developing this technique that I call Surefoot. we don't really know how it works.
Yeah.
And I've had so many people tell me, you know what, it doesn't matter. What matters is it does.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, offering the horse an unstable surface and letting him feel how he's loading his weight on his foot makes him aware, we're back to awareness, makes him aware of how he's standing on that foot and shows him other options which he carries forward. It's so fascinating to watch the horse walk off the pad, and you can see their brain just turning, right? And they're going, wow, how is that foot meeting the ground?
Yeah.
And the riders can feel this. Yeah. So with Surefoot, we get to see the horse teaching itself, self-discovery, changing the way he moves because he's become aware of what he's doing.
Yeah.
So we all have habits, right? And a friend of mine says, you know, do you have a habit you'd like to change? And I, oh yeah. She says, do you have a habit somebody else has that, you know, like your husband that you'd like to? Oh yeah, for sure. You know, you go off the list, right? But you know, it's one thing for us to try and get the horse to change his habits. It's another for the horse to feel his own habit and change that to something that feels better.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what's so cool when I watch these horses is that they are finding their own way to a better place. And we're the facilitators in that process.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool. I have so many people now sending me case histories, you know, my horse was post-EPM and he couldn't do his shoulder in anymore, and I did the cushions and in one session, you know, or, you know, my horse couldn't be saddled without anxiety and I used the cushions, and now my husband can saddle him on the cross ties and he's yawning. So it's just, it's great because it's simple, it's easy to do. You know, if you can pick up a foot, you can do Surefoot. And so it doesn't require, you know, that's why I have the DVD. There's safety guidelines and things to look for. But this is something that owners and horse people can do for themselves without, you know, spending gobs of money on training or some other professional coming in.
Yeah.
And as a way to restore movement in your horse, to make your horse easier for the farrier, in rehabilitating from injury or illness, or, you know, just to make so that he moves better, you know, so that to alleviate training issues. Surefoot has a place in that toolkit, and you can combine it with, you know, all the other things you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's great, and it's so much fun to hear the stories of how people who've never met me, watched the DVD, got the pads, did it with their horse, and, you know, had transformation happen. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and I can say too that, you know, when I first saw it, I don't know if I want to say skeptical, but it was just kind of like I had no understanding of it. But in the first lesson, then when we did it with my horse Molly, and I could just feel such a difference in her movement, it is really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And, you know, I would be skeptical, too, if somebody told me that. I mean, I'm like, really? But, you know, I mean, that's the thing is once you see it for yourself and you see the horse change, you realize it doesn't matter how it's working. It'd be nice to understand it, but it doesn't matter.
That's true.
Yeah, the horses are so clear and so quick to tell you, wow. You know, and if they don't like it, you know, that's okay too. You learn something there, and it leads you in a new direction to consider. So, you know, there are times when Surefoot's, the horse doesn't totally groove on it, or it's not, you know, it's not something he wants. But that's another piece of information that guides us toward discovery and sorting out what is going on, so that we can have a better partnership with our horse. And the number of times now people have come to me and said, you know, I did Surefoot, and now he comes up to me in the field, or he's, you know, you know, it changes that relationship. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, this was great. I want to thank you again for taking the time to do the interview with me. I could probably sit here and ask you questions all day, but we'll wrap it up here. And there's a link right below the video where you can check out Wendy's books and DVDs.
And I have lots of free content on my website, lots of little tips and articles.
The Murdoch Minutes, right?
Yep. And if they like my Murdoch Method Facebook page, they'll get that in their news feed. We put up a Murdoch Minute on Mondays.
Yep, I've been enjoying them, so sign up for them too.
Great.
And thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks a lot.
Ned.
Thank you.